Hi folks, my next little video is going to be the disassembly of this K20 Honda head. This specifically is a PRB version of the head. There's several different variants of the K series heads. This specific one is from a Japanese import, or a JDM EP3, so it has the slightly upgraded cams and things like that in it, known as the JDM or DC5, or call them what you like, cams. So this head's going to be stripped down for future use. This video was just going to show you the process of stripping them down. Not that it's complicated, but there is an order how you take out the cams and loosen bolts and things that way. So I'm going to make a start and get stuck into loosening these bolts. First things I'll probably start off with is things like the cam sensors at the right hand side, the water temp, the screen filter here. Get things like that removed and bagged up. Just on that note, I'm organised with 2 boxes of these Ziploc bags. These will allow me to store things like the valves, etc. inside them, keep them organised, label the bag, so you know where everything goes, what cylinder it's from, etc, etc. That'll keep things organised. I have plenty of brown paper to wrap things up if need be. I have all my tools sitting out behind me, so I'm organised that way. Things like a Sharpie and stuff to write in the bags with. So I'm pretty organised and good to go. So let's get stuck into this. Okay, starting off with, first of all, the cam sensor bolts here, just at the side of the head here. That is a 10mm bolt, if useful. Okay, that's that out with a bit of force. And you can see that one's been through the wars, it's got slightly knocked there. So I'll set these 2 out on the bench beside me and get them labelled. And obviously you're looking at the front of the engine here, which is obviously going to be the intake side, and obviously the back's going to be the exhaust side. So while I'm going to label things anyway for good measure, some of these things won't matter what order they go back in, but I'm going to be organised and make sure things go back in their right place. Okay, that's that bolt out, and the other sensor. You can see that one's intact and perfectly usable again. Okay, and just to give you an idea of how I'm labelling things, you can see my scribbles there in the bag. Cam sensor, I would generally separate these out, but it's pretty obvious. That's the broken one is the intake side, and the working one intact is the exhaust side. So that's that sealed up, and I can set these bags out of the way. I'll now move on to the screen filter here, get it off. Okay, you can see there is the screen filter there. Quite surprisingly clean. The head is a used one that I'm not totally sure of the history of. It was bought at quite a good price, but the VTEC filter seems relatively clean. So reasonable sign. But anyway, I'll get this labelled up and backed up. Okay, the next thing for me to do is to remove the water temp sensor here, just on the side of the head. As you can see, I've already cheated and loosened it up. I think that was a 17mm spanner to remove it. And there we go, that's the sensor removed. The next step will be to get the rocker cover off. You can see these are only nuts, non-genuine nuts instead of the dome nuts, to hold these on temporarily. So let's start loosening these and get the rocker cover off. Okay, there's one nut off. Two. On the other side. Last one. And these can stick on a wee bit. Bear in mind there's a rubber gasket on it, so it can take a wee bit of force here, so let's have a go. Got a bit of movement already. Lost a few of the washers. Not to worry. And there you go, folks. You can see that is the head revealed, showing the cams, caps, the valve, retainers, springs, etc. all exposed. So the next stage will be for us to remove things like the tensioner, the chain sort of tensioner, the timing chain guide thing at the top here. Then using a specific sequence, starting to loosen these bolts off so we can get the cams removed and we can go from there. Okay folks, to get this loosened, as mentioned, there is a specific loosening sequence. If I edit this properly, I will flash up the camshaft holder bolt loosening sequence for a wee photo. Might be pretty poor resolution, but it'll hopefully be clear enough to illustrate it to you. Anyway, you'll see me loosening these, so I will start into that now. And I'm cheating with having the diagram beside me. Let's start into the first one to remove. And whenever I loosen this, I'm going to leave the bolt in its holder itself. Yep, that's it loose. On to the next one, number 2. I can find that. Number 2 is here. And the third one. That's loose as well. Note number 4 here is moving on to a 12mm nut here. You see that took a wee bit of force to get out there. Okay, now on to number 5 here. You can see that's like a captive nut jobby and a long bolt if you like my technical description, but that's it out anyway. And 6 and 7 are here right beside us. Okay, that's those two lists. 8 and 9. Nine. Okay, both lists. The 10 and 11 are the inner ones in the same area. That's loose. And this one's already loose. Okay, both of them are loose. We have 12 and 13. Okay, them both loose. And beside them are 14 and 15. There we go. We have 16 and 17. Go around the other side. And that's pretty loose as well. And 17. Both loose. And of course 18 and 19 are the inside. And this one's coming out now as well. Okay, that's endless. And I can only presume we're heading towards the middle next. Okay, I know quite a few people struggle with these cam caps, but they seem to come off quite easily. I would say the head's been apart previously. Some of those bolts weren't that tight, but either way, got them all out. What I found was generally one side lifted up and just tended to sort of lift one side of the caps up. That loosened up both and it just popped out. So easy as that. And I would suggest not using anything like a hammer to try and loosen them. You know, it's a patient man's game, I would say, so take it a wee bit easier, I would suggest. But anyway, I'll take these caps out one at a time, leaving the bolts in place, set them beside each other and keep them all in order. You can see that is also the cams loose there as well. So what I'm going to do is delicately lift these out, spray them down with WD-40 and set them on to some cling film stretch and seal whatever you want to call it, clear film you would use for baking or wrapping things up in the kitchen. And obviously that will hold the WD-40 in and around the cam, so save any corrosion getting in. So I'll just lightly wrap them up in that, and it gives them a wee bit of protection as well. So I will aim to do that now. Okay, let's lift this cam out. That's one out to the side. I have a sink and a draining board just beside me here. That's the first cam out. So as I said, I'll quickly spray it down with a bit of WD-40 just to hold it pretty true or keep it clean and free from corrosion. I'm not going to go too mad on wrapping it up, because you'll see later we need to take off these gears for the chain on the end of each cam, plus these jobbies here as well at the end of each one. So it's more just to wrap them up to keep them a little protected that way. There you go, folks, just to show you what I've been doing there. Sprayed it down in WD-40, wrapped it up in cling film there. That's what we call it here in the UK, stretch and seal, etc, etc. Anyway, that's the first one wrapped up. And move on to the exhaust camera as well. Okay, let's lift this out. There we go. You can see that is a good chunk of the head disassembled. So my next task is going to be looking at getting access to the rockers here. And what you need to do is put a cable tie or a zip tie around these. These are what locks together to put the cams onto the VTEC lobe. If you remove everything, there's a pin that goes between these to lock it in. If you remove everything, the pin can come out and it can be a bit of a pain to put back together. So it's recommended you put a wee zip tie or a cable tie around each set of three there. That holds them all together and makes disassembly that wee bit easier. Okay folks, you'll see that the cams are both removed there and wrapped up. And just to hold the rocker assemblies in place, you'll see I have cable ties there just to show you how they're installed. I would suggest that there, doing them slightly further up, is a slightly better idea, and down here tends to hold the VTEC rocker, I'm going to call it. Well, that's the right name or not, but the larger middle one, that's a better idea, holding it in place. You'll find you don't quite have the space at the side here, just where the cam holder thing would sit. You don't have the room to push it right up and across. But either way, I would suggest on the majority of them you try to do it that way. And this is only really trying to hold these things in place to make the disassembly a bit easier. So it doesn't really need to be load bearing, but I could save you a wee bit of heartache further down the line. So the next stage will be to get this rocker assembly out. I think I have all the bolts loose. There was one hex head further up back here. This may well need to come out, not too sure, but either way I'll see if I can get these out and progress on from there. Okay, the rocker arm assembly was much easier to loosen than I thought. Basically I thought about getting a mallet and giving it a tap, and I did actually bring it out and I went, not too sure about doing this. So what I actually come up with was using a bit of a pry bar, and I can see there seems to be wee access or designed access holes in the rocker arm assembly to allow you to lever up on. So short story, using a very small pry bar and using an old towel or rag to protect it. I went in at the corner here, you can see there is a small gap there, using the rag or the towel just to protect from any scores. You can see that's the whole thing lifted up, and you'll see there's actually pry points in each of the four corners there, and they're in at the side here on the left hand side of the engine. So yeah, you can see that's it loose. So So yeah, we should be good to go to try and lift this off now and set it aside. There we go, folks. That is the rocker arm assembly lifted off, and it was that simple. Literally just lift it off and it's set down just beneath there's a rag there down below, sitting just down there. So really the next stage is to look at getting the valves, springs, etc. removed. And it's good to see in here, I was dubious about the head. You can see one of the stamping marks in there, which confirms it's a PRB head. Strangely, in my head, it seems to have had the B adjusted on it. It's a wee bit of cleaner metal, so I was slightly suspicious, but valve sizes and port sizes all check out, so it seems to be okay. But look, there's another true way of checking what version of head, K-series head, you have. Anyway, as mentioned, the next stage will be for me to remove the valves and get them removed, and I'm going to bag these up and get them all up for sale, etc. And I'll try and keep each valve numbered and keep the retainers, etc. all in one place, so there's one valve assembly with the springs and all to go with it. But that's nearly the head stripped down, and you'll see these additional springs here. They are what was maybe stopping you pushing the larger VTEC rocker down. That spring there is known as the lost motion assembly on the car, so that's maybe something to get replaced as well at some stage. But anyway, let's get cracking and get the rest of this head either packed up or stripped down. Okay, I've lifted out the lost motion assembly springs there. I've labelled them all individually. They're probably going to be replaced, but there's 8 of those and they have been removed. So left inside this head are the springs, valve, retainers, etc. So just before I move on to showing you how to remove the springs, retainers, etc., I'll just show you this rocker arm assembly. Just to illustrate, folks, that is the rocker arm assembly, as mentioned, wrapped up in cling film. You'll see I've put the caps on there and just lightly popped the bolts through just to hold it all in place. I'll run a band of tape round the bolt heads just to hold them in place, and another wee lap of cling film and probably some brown paper. Holds everything together. Saves things getting lost or something put into the wrong position, etc, etc. Okay, the next job will be removing the valves, springs, retainers, etc, etc, and the keepers as well. Basically, this tool is like a glorified G-clamp, and it'll sit, this end here will sit on top of the valve, and I would recommend putting the likes of a rubber cap beneath it just to protect the valve. This one's just bare metal, some of them have rubber covers, etc. But we Coke bottle cap, or in this case a milk bottle cap, will provide some protection and won't obviously score the valve. And you can see this section here is open, and that will clamp over the valve there, obviously straightened up. And the wee windows at each side allow you, using a wee pen magnet, to get the keepers out. And those are what lock the retainer in place. Once the keepers are out and you relieve the tension, the spring and the retainers will push past the end of the valve and the tension can be removed, and therefore you can take the springs, retainers, keepers, etc. out. So I'll get the first one set up and have a go at doing that. There we go, that's the first intake valve out. Spring, retainer, keepers, etc. are all in that one bag, keeping it all together. Found it very straightforward to do. Leaving the tension off using a small magnetic tool. I used one of these wee magnetic screwdriver ends. 2 keepers come off very easily. and as I unscrewed it you could see the spring, the tension being relieved as the spring sort of grew out, and once the assembly was off I could pull the spring and all out. And I also used a set of the spring or valve seal removal tools, and you'll see, if I show you in there, wee jobby there just at my finger, that's one of the valve seals. That would obviously never be reused, but basically you clamp on with the pliers and give it a tug. That comes out. So, fairly straightforward. So I'll probably set up the camera and record me removing the number 8 exhaust valve and spring. Okay folks, you'll see that's the assembly clamped on there, only hand tight. There's a wee bar there just to use a bit of leverage to tighten it all up. I lower down the camera to give you a better view of this all. Let's see how it all works here. Okay, so I'll tighten this bar up here and you should start seeing the spring being pushed down, or the retainer I should say. It's popped. There we go, and go down far enough past the keepers. And if I get another bag ready, so using my magnetic tool wants to work. There's one keeper, two keeper. And you'll see as I start undoing the tension here, it will go up past the end of the valve as it grows. And it's gone very loose now. And that's it out of the way. So I should be able to lift both springs out like so, and I'll leave the retainer in place. That's that out, and pop that into the bag. And the next tool will be the valve seals removal pliers. So I tend to clamp it on, give it a turn, make it loose. You don't need loads of force. Probably will in this one. Boom, that's it off. And you see, you probably heard the valve drop straight out there. But yeah, that's the seal out. If I put that into my hand, hopefully you can see that. And I'll pick up the valve here and show you that too. And there we go, that's the valve. I don't know if that means possibly that those collars are a bit too loose, that the valve dropped out. Don't claim to be an expert, but either way it came out pretty easy, so don't know if that means something. But what I'll do is I'll crack on with the rest of the valves here and see how I go. Okay, as you'll see, that is 4 of the valves removed. These are the last 4. This is the intake side, exhaust side. So obviously valves 8 and 7. I'll crack on with getting the rest of them removed. You'll see I still have the spring seats still in place. They seem to rotate and be loose. I don't know if they're quite a tight fit, but I'll work out how to get them out with a magnet or similar. Either way, I'll see what I can do that way. But yeah, I'll move on, get the remaining valves removed, and we can go from there. Okay folks, there we go. The head is now fully stripped. You'll see I also have the spring seats removed. I wasn't too sure if these were removable or not, but I've removed them. They're actually just a very good interference fit, and in short, a magnet. With a little bit of wiggling, managed to get it removed, so they're all out now. So yeah, that's the head stripped. So now it's a case of whether you want to rebuild it yourself or port it or do whatever you need to do. But what I might do is put the rockers back in place, rocker arm assembly back in place, and we cradle at the top, and put everything back in place so it's all neat and tidy and nothing will get damaged, etc, etc. But yeah, hopefully that's of help, folks. And if you do have any queries, do give me a shout. Probably the last wee clip I'll do in this series will be taking the cam gears off the cams. I'll show you how to do that as well. As promised, I would show you the setup for removing the cam gears, the VTC gears on the cams, and the timing plates for the far end of the cams. Basically on the OE cams there's 2 hex heads just where these 2 spanners are. These hex heads are 24mm, so really you need to get 2 24mm open-ended spanners, put them on at each side, and the bolt at the end of the VTC stroke intake gear is a 17mm, and I don't have anybody here to help me at the time, but just to illustrate, you get someone to stand on both ends of those spanners, and obviously with your breaker bar lift and undo the nut. As a note, it is highly recommended that you don't use an impact gun to remove them. It can damage the VTC gears and the cams. So have a go at doing that, and that should do the job. And you'll see I have the cam well protected. It's wrapped up in a cling film and soaked in WD-40. I also have it on a bit of red carpet, an old sheet and an old towel. Bear in mind the cam's quite a delicate bit of kit, so you do want to protect it. So that's how you remove the VTC gear. On the exhaust cam, it is a slightly different size nut. It's a 14mm from memory. Same principle applies to remove it. And the timing sprockets at the end of the cam here, they take an 8mm hex key, and the same principle, hex key in there on a breaker bar or equivalent, and undo it that way. And that should get your VTC gears, etc., all removed from your cams. You don't have to remove them, but if you're installing aftermarket cams, you might want to swap these over. They can be, from a quick look this morning, £150 sterling to replace these, so you perhaps do want to swap them over and save yourself a few quid by not having to buy other ones. But anyway, hopefully that video was of help, and maybe gives somebody a few ideas and maybe encouragement to have a go at doing things themselves, and it might well save you a few quid doing it yourselves. But yeah, any comments or queries, feel free to stick them at the end of the video, and naturally like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. All the best, bye.